We're gonna skip. All right, so what we were supposed to cover earlier today that we did not get to because we covered lots of really good stuff. So if you missed the recording earlier today, we talked about DocuSign and SkySlope and how DocuSign interacts with zip forms and how to find missing files when they don't go to signing correctly, or how to download an RPA because there's some glitch in the system that doesn't allow it to download the RPA from the email. So anyway, so we talked about all that. We also talked about how to add like a transaction coordinator and why you should have a transaction coordinator. Probably should update the title of it because I forgot about that part of it, and how to add them to your stuff. So it was a really good training. However, we had plans to talk about the supporting documents for the RPA and the residential listing agreement. So we're talking about that tonight, which is why it's being recorded. So if you don't know how to get into zip forms yet, and feel free to interrupt me if you have questions as we move through this, you go to car.org. It's the only one that's a .org, car.org, car.org. And then in the middle of the page, there's a little bubble that says transactions. You're going to click on that. It's going to take you to another page where you're going to click on wolf.net or something like that, transaction management. And then it's going to prompt you to log in, and then you're going to click a little yellow button, which opens up a new window. It says proceed to like zip forms or take me to zip forms. You're going to click on that. That's the yellow button. And then it's going to open up a new window. So if you have pop-up blockers on, you may not get in. Make sure your pop-up blockers is allowing it. And then that's going to bring you to zip forms in a new window. So zip forms is where we keep all of our transaction files, documents, everything you need to be a successful real estate agent is here in your car forms, your purchase agreements, your counter offers, your whatever you need is in here. So we did talk about the purchase agreements. Okay. So to start a new file, I'm going to pretend like we didn't cover that. To start a new file, you just come up here. Yours may log in on dashboard. It may look something like this. Okay. If it does, you just need to come over here and click on transactions right underneath the blue bar on the upper left-hand side of your page, which brings you to your transaction page. If your transaction page looks different than mine, it's because you can change them. Well, you may not have anything in there, and that's okay too. But if you have stuff and it's laid out differently, there's a little 3 lines over here on the upper right-hand side of the page. If you click on that, it'll put it in list form versus the cubes. Normally, I'm a fan of a list thing in everything. I like list everywhere except zip forms for some reason. Don't ask me why. I like cubes and zip forms. Sorry. So
it works.
Okay. We are going to, if we click new, that's how you create a new file. And we're going to just create a new purchase offer because I'm going to go over those forms first. I usually name my purchases like the last name of my buyer and then purchase. That's how I keep them straight. Next, you hit residential, and then we click move on. Unless it wasn't residential, if it was multifamily or something like that, you click the appropriate button. But for the most case, it's going to be residential. Then we talked about this in the purchase agreement. In parties, you want to make sure you put your buyers in here with their email addresses, their names as they appear on the pre-approval letter, or their legal names, and then their email addresses. And that's all you have to put in there. And then we're going to go over to documents. We're navigating that gray bar at the top of the page. From here, this is the documents that I include with my offer for the most part. So we have our residential purchase agreement. In addition to that, I include the SBSA, or the Statewide Buyer and Seller Advisory, the Market Conditions Advisory, and the Wildfire Disaster Advisory. Those are my 3 forms that I include with my purchase agreement. Okay.
And
we have,
why, I'm sorry, why are yours auto-filled in there? Did you click on something that already exists, or does that always
magic.
generate?
Magic.
Okay. Okay, just making sure.
So I have templates set up, so it automatically applied my template. So to add the forms, we come over here to the upper right-hand side of the page and we'll click all forms. And that's where you can select those forms from here. And you can search them either by like partial name, like I could search statewide, or I could search by SBSA. So you can search by acronym or partial name, either one works. And once it's highlighted, you know it's already in your transaction. Melissa looks perplexed.
Well, I'm doing this on my phone and it's really small. So when you said you going on to documents to add the forms, I'm like
So
trying to see you're under documents.
So I'm in documents and then I click all forms on your phone. It may be add document.
There it is.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay, you're good.
It lays out a little differently on your phone, so I wasn't sure. So that's how you would add those forms. So again, the forms that I usually send over with just about every offer is that statewide buyer and seller advisory, the market conditions advisory, and the wildfire disaster advisory. You might also already have in your file the BRE, which is the buyer representation agreement, right? We covered that one last week or the week before. So your file may start with that in it, because you can create a file before you even go to write an offer. You could create a file just with that BRE agreement in it. Okay. Now, in addition, if you're working with another agent on a file, I don't know what you guys are all working out on your open houses and stuff, if you're working them together, but you may have an additional agent acknowledgement, which allows both people to work on behalf of the client. Or maybe you're going on vacation and you want somebody to be able to work your files while you're gone. You're going to fill out that additional agent acknowledgement. It just authorizes that agent to act on your behalf. Okay, otherwise you don't need that one. Okay, statewide buyer and seller advisory. This one we're going to see a couple different times. We're going to see it here. We're also going to see it in with my listing agreement. I send it out with both. The statewide buyer and seller advisory is a 14-page document. It outlines the rights and duties of the buyer, the rights and duties of the seller, and the rights and duties of the broker or agents. Okay, so this just outlines that, hey, it's the buyer's responsibility ultimately to understand the condition of the property, what's going on with the property, what's wrong with the property, what's right with the property, right? They're to seek legal advice, do all their due diligence on the property. The seller's right is to disclose any material facts they have that might affect the value or desirability of the property. Okay, and they have disclosures they have to fill out. The broker's rights and duties are, we don't have expertise in the areas of lots of things, but we're supposed to do a diligent agent visual inspection of a property, as well as disclose any information we have that pertains to the property. Okay. The next page is the table of contents, and then it's going to go through 13 pages, 12 and a half pages of all the different types of inspections and investigations you can do on a property. So section A is all the investigation of the physical conditions, easements, access, encroachments, environmental hazards, formaldehyde, geological hazards, inspections, mold, pets and animals, septic systems, soil and geological conditions, square footage, lot size, boundaries and surveys, water intrusion, well and water systems, wood destroying pests, fire hardening defensible space and wildfire disasters, right? Section B is the property use and ownership that you can investigate, which includes things like the feasibility of accessory dwelling units, building permits, zoning, code compliance, buyer intended future use of and modifications to the property, the California Fair Plan, future repairs, replacements, remodels, heating, ventilation, or air conditioning systems, historic designation, coastal commission, architectural, landscape, agricultural, or open space, and other restrictions on buildings and improvements, insurance, title insurance after foreclosure, land lease, marijuana, cannabis, and methamphetamine labs, owners, title insurance, rent and eviction control laws and ordinances, retrofit, building requirements, and point of sale requirements, views, swimming pool safety and security, water shortages and conservation, improvements, improvement bond, Melrose Community District, and other assessment districts, right? So all those things. Section C is the off-site and neighborhood conditions. Keep in mind that anything that is covered in this document is a reason that you can cancel under that investigation contingency. Just throwing that out there. Off-site and neighborhood conditions, golf course disclosures, neighborhood area, personal factors, buyer intended use, high-speed rails, and smoking restrictions. Neighborhood noise sources, schools, underground pipelines and utilities, wildlife, sea level rise, coastal properties. That would be your tsunami zones, death on the property, earthquake fault zones and seismic hazard zones, EPA, lead-based paint renovation, repair and painting rules, fire hazards, FERPTA, California withholding, flood hazards, Megan's Law database disclosure, supplemental property tax bills. Zones may change, right? And then we have contract related issues and terms, which is like arbitration, electronic signatures, escrow funds, home warranty, identification of natural persons behind shell companies and all cash transactions, liquidated damages, mediation, non-confidentiality of offers, online or wire funds transfers. And then F is other factors affecting the property, which is community enhancement, private transfer fees, general recall, defective product, class action information, homeowner association and covenants, conditions and restrictions of CC&Rs, charging stations, FHA, VA approval, legal action, marketing, internet advertising, internet blogs, social media, PACE loans and liens, rekeying, and solar panel leases. Woohoo! And then normally you check this box here and you go, oh, there's also a Solano County disclosures and disclaimers advisory, because in case that wasn't enough, Solano County has their own like 10-page disclosure that they want to share with you as well. Okay, now the reason I include this up front, and I normally, when I go over this with my buyers or my sellers, I just say, this is the statewide buyer and seller advisory. It's 14 pages of all the different kinds of inspections and investigations you can do on a property. I just want you to be aware of all the different things you can look at up front. And that's it. Okay, it's up to them to read it. I just let them know that's what it is. Okay.
Question. Can I ask you something?
Yes.
How does this tie into the BI, buyer investigation elections? Is that completely separate? Because it's almost double, no?
Yeah, so it is separate and it's tied together, right? So most of the stuff that's on that buyer inspection elections are mentioned here on the statewide buyer and seller advisory. We do the buyer inspection elections right after we enter into contract on a property, generally, where this one we do, I usually, like I said, send out with the offer just so they're made aware of all the things they may want to consider when purchasing the property.
And on the BIE is where you check what you're going to do.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes. No need to apologize, and you're welcome. Okay. So that's the statewide buyer and seller advisory, and that's why I include it with the offer, because I feel like it should be upfront. Talks about their rights and duties and the different types of inspections they can have. Okay. The next one I include up front is the market conditions advisory. And again, this is one we'll see on both the seller and buyer files, because this one is a 1-page, 2-page disclosure that talks about the fact that the market is cyclical and that buyers or sellers should understand what the market is doing at the time they either are putting an offer in on the property or getting their property ready to list. And that ultimately from the buyer, what they decide to offer is their responsibility, right? If we give this to our buyer after the offer is accepted, it's really too late at that point for them to make their own decisions. So I want to make sure they know up front that, hey, we can make suggestions and recommendations, but ultimately what they decide to offer on the property is up to them. It also talks about the fact that we don't recommend non-contingent offers, that we can tell you what's getting accepted. We can tell you that this is what clients are doing in order to make their offer accepted, but we don't want to say, like, you should write a non-contingent offer. We want to be really careful with how we word that, only because they're going to sign this form as well. And we want them to be in charge of taking on that risk, right? My job is to protect their deposit. If they're satisfied with the inspections that have been presented, if they're satisfied with the fact they may have to come out of pocket with some appraisal money by not putting in an appraisal contingency, or the fact they may lose their deposit at some point, if they write a non-contingent offer, then that's up to them. But we want to make sure that they understand that risk. Talks about broker recommendations here, multiple offers, that they may be writing a property on, writing offers on a property with multiple offers on it, and that the That the buyer can write multiple offers, right? This right here is where it outlines the fact that the buyer could write multiple offers, but they should be really careful because they may get obligated on 2 different properties and it may cause problems. Okay.
Don't want that.
We don't want that. And then seller considerations, right? So this is where it applies to the seller and why I send it out with my listing agreements, because it just talks about that ultimately, like, we're going to make recommendations. We're going to talk about as agents where the market is, what the market analysis looks like on their property, but what they decide to list that property at is their final decision. Okay. So that's the market conditions advisory. Any questions about the MCA? Okay. The other one that I include with my offer is the wildfire disaster advisory. This is not the fire hardening one, the more in-depth one. This one really just states that, hey, we're in an area where there's reoccurring wildfires. And there may be a risk to your property, even if it's in town, with wildfires, and you should investigate insurability and the cost of insurance upfront and early during the transaction. And then if they want any resources, there's a list of resources. So that's kind of what this document outlines, which is why I include it up front and have my buyer sign it. Let's get this out of the way and have them look at it and make sure they're aware that there's wildfires in the area, and they should talk with their insurance agent nice and early in the transaction. Okay, any questions about that one?
I do have a question. So let's say they looked at it and they were like, oh, I don't want to pay that extra on the fire insurance. And that was like a deal breaker for them to continue on. Like, you're giving this before they put an offer in on a home or after they put an offer?
I'm giving this up front with the off when they go to sign the offer.
Sign the offer saying
Yeah.
that they're okay. So they were like, nope. I mean, I guess I'm thinking if you're giving that to sign, then they would have needed to do this research before, like almost like being given this at a buyer's like signing agreement. Like, you know, you by the way, this might be coming up, so you might be prepared to look into these things. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you could, however, they're not going to be able to get an accurate quote on fire insurance until they have a property identified that they want to make an offer on. And the insurability of a property is part of that inspection or investigation contingency. So this just advises them to make sure, for the most part, right, your in-town properties, you're not going to have higher fire insurance on the majority of those. It's not going to be an issue, but I want to make them aware and make sure that they're thinking about insurance, and I should get that cost.
Got it. I totally spaced the contingency to the fact of like, that would be okay. You're okay.
It does fall in that, unless they're taking away their inspection contingency and the insurability. They need to know, they may want to make a couple calls before they sign the offer.
Got it. But like giving out those resources of just being aware that when we go to put an offer in on a home, that wouldn't be like anything really needed to be said. This would just be fine. Like at the time they get this, not, hey, by the way, later on when we get to this point, these are the resources to look into these things. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I feel like at the time of offer is fine. We do usually talk about in the buyer's consult, we talk about the cost of insurance and stuff. So they should be aware that they're going to need to get some quotes. And I usually advise people to check with whoever their auto insurance is through, because ultimately most of the time you get a multi-policy discount. And then if they need other recommendations, I'm happy to make recommendations of people to check in with.
Got it. That's good to know. Okay.
Yeah. So those are the 3 documents that I include with my offer. And then in addition to that, sometimes we do that Solano County. Oh, it's not going to be in here. Hold on. If you do, I'll show you where to find this document later. We're going to go add document. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Browse for document. It's on my desktop. If you search like Solano County real estate disclosure on Google, it should come up. It's also in SkySlope. And you can add this to your template so that it pops up every time, just for the record.
What's it called?
So you don't have to upload it.
Amy, what's it called again, please?
It's the Solano County Disclosures and Disclaimers Advisory. And the latest copy of it should be dated for 2021. There was a new one that came out in October of 2021. So this one I also fill out, and it just talks all about Solano County. The address of the property goes in there. And then it talks about locks, alarms, openers, tempered glass, fireplaces, and wood stoves, because part of Solano County is in the Bay Area Clean Air Initiative, which stops in Fairfield. So Fairfield and below all is under the Bay Area Clean Air Initiative. So you have to you can only burn wood burning fireplaces on burn days. Vacaville and Dixon do not fall under that requirement, but it talks about that. The wet weather conditions, the Sassoon Marsh, the property tax reassessment, private transfer fees, higher property tax areas like the Benicia Marina, Lanier Mare Island, right? The Mills Act, the Williamson Act, the earthquakes and sewer lateral pipe inspections and Solano County agricultural notice and the BCDC and the manufactured homes, mobile home obsolescence, mobile home space rent control, property registration program, the city of Vallejo. That's for vacant properties. Where'd it go? That's vacant. Information technology corporations, the Brialto landfill. I don't even know what this is, this turtle lot. I don't even know. Benicia Arsenal, Benicia is really a bad place. You should not move to Benicia. Benicia alarm ordinance, the rental property inspection program. Vallejo and Benicia are our biggest culprits here in the disclosures. Just throwing that out there. Mare Island Naval Base, Vallejo, Mare Island, Neighborhood Law Program, the Green Valley Cordelia Water District, Rancho Solano, Paradise Valley Golf Ball easements, the Travis Air Force Base, the recommendations retain an attorney and accountant, and then they sign. So that's the Solano County disclosure. You can read that at any time. The other way to find it is going to be in SkySlope, and I'll show you where to find that in SkySlope here in a little minute. So that one I also include. If you want, when you open this file up and you click on this document like I did, once it's been uploaded, in this screen here, you can go to markup right here on the top of this page. It allows you to add text. And I can add the address right here to this form by clicking on that. Okay, magical. And then you just hit save. So that was, in case you missed it, I'll show you again. We're going to close out. So I uploaded the document by clicking add document. Oops. My computer's click happy today. We hit add document. It added the document. When I click on the document and it opens it, then we hit markup here on the top of the page, which allows me to add text. So you just click text, click where you want to add it, and it adds it in there. Okay.
And I'm finding one online that, I'm sorry, you said the date, but I'm noticing yours. Did you say, because the one I'm pulling up is November 1st of last year, so it's newer than that. That's the one, right? Like, I'm not looking for that date.
Oh, was there one dated November 1st?
I just pulled it up, yeah, and first
Of
thing that popped
2021?
up. Yeah.
Oh, then yes, use that
11/1.
one.
Okay. Content, yeah, it looks like the same exact thing. I'm like,
It probably
crap,
is.
it's
They're
10
only 5 days
pages.
apart.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, that's why I was like, so, okay,
11 pages. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll have to look now.
sorry.
All right. So there's that. So that's what I include with my purchase agreement. Sometimes I don't include like the county, and most counties have a disclosure. There's a Yellow County one. I think there's a Sacramento County one. When you get in the Bay Area, don't ask me about those. I don't do business down there. Sacramento's
That's
as
where
far
I
as
draw
I
the
go.
line.
That's where I draw the line. You're lucky if you get me to Fairfield.
Pushing it.
All right. So if I were going to do a listing, we're going to hit new. I'm going to hit new listing. I normally title my listing the name of the street. I don't worry about listing or anything because I know that that's a listing file for me. You're going to click what kind of property it is, residential, industrial, right? Condo. Most of them are going to be residential. And then we're going to hit save, whatever that little green button said that was behind your guys' pictures. Now, I also have a template set up for this. So there's a training on template and a new agent, and we can go over that here in the next couple of weeks if y'all want to. But so if I go into documents here, it has applied my template to this file. So here's what I include with my listing agreements. I have the listing agreement, the RLA form, residential listing agreement exclusive. I have the market conditions advisory that we already talked about, the statewide buyer and seller advisory that we also talked about, the SBSA. In addition to that, I include the water heater smoke detector statement of compliance, the WHSD, and the water conserving plumbing fixtures carbon monoxide detector notice, the WCMD. So the WHSD and the WCMD. I include the square footage and lot size advisory, the SFLS. In addition to that, I go in and I go into the tax records and I download the tax records, which has the square footage on it, and I upload it into my file and I include it as part of that form. You'll see why in a little minute. If the property is not going to go on the market right away within 24 hours of the signed listing agreement, I also include the SELM form, the SELM, or the seller's instruction to exclude listing from the multiple listing service. The disclosure information advisory, the DIA. There's that Solano County disclosures and disclaimers advisory again that attaches to the SBSA. And then I also have started including the KW Vaca Valley document retention form. Wah, wah, wah. Okay. Listing agreement, we're going to go over in the next week or so. Market conditions advisory, we already covered. The SBSA, we already covered. The water heater smoke detector statement of compliance just states that your water heater needs to be double strapped. Okay. Sellers are going to sign it. The smoke detector statement of compliance states that you need to have smoke detectors in your property. It's a point of sale requirement. Both of those are point of sale requirements in the state of California, which means they need to be done in order to transfer the property. For smoke detectors, you should have one in each bedroom and one in the hallway leading to the bedrooms. And if you have more than one level, there should be one on each level. So if you have a two-story house with all the bedrooms upstairs, you're going to have one somewhere downstairs. You're going to have one in the hallway, upstairs, and one in each of the bedrooms. Okay, smoke detector statement of compliance. Any questions about the WHSD? This form and the next form really bother me. Okay, just for the record, this one talks about water heaters and smoke detectors. The next one talks about water conserving plumbing fixtures and a carbon monoxide detector. I feel like the smoke detector and the carbon monoxide should be on the same form, and the water fixtures and the water heater should be on the same form. That's just me though. So I don't talk about these forms very often because they bother me. So here's your water conserving plumbing fixtures and carbon monoxide notice. Just talking about that in the state of California, all fixtures, when they get changed out, should get changed out with water conserving plumbing fixtures. In fact, you can't even buy non-water conserving plumbing fixtures, non-compliant fixtures in the state of California, or have them shipped to California. Don't try to go buy non-conforming plumbing fixtures on Amazon and have them shipped here. They won't let them come. Okay, just throwing that out there. So it just talks about that you're supposed to, and then as part of your disclosures as a seller on the seller property questionnaire, it asks if there's any fixtures that are non-compliant fixtures. Okay. Carbon monoxide detector notice just talks about that all properties at the point of sale requirements are supposed to have carbon monoxide detectors. There should be one in a house that has any of these three things. It could have a gas anything, right? So if it's got natural gas or propane going to the property, if it has a fireplace, or if it has a attached garage. So if it has any one of those three things, the house is required to have a carbon monoxide detector, such as our house. We have no attached garage. We have no gas in our house. However, we have a wood burning fireplace, so we're still required to have one. So our carbon monoxide detector is actually in our fireplace right now, hanging out with the black widow that lives in there. It's a very happy relationship between the two of them. So before the appraiser comes to do an appraisal on our property, we'll have to pull that out and put it on the wall. It's in there.
Good luck. Sounds a little dangerous to get that back.
I did go in there and spray it a couple days ago, so hopefully it's dead.
Oh, good. Good.
So anyways, carbon monoxide detectors, if your house requires one, which most properties do, you're required to have one in the property, usually in the hallway leading to the sleeping areas. And the same thing as the smoke detectors. If it's more than one story, you should have one on each story. So one downstairs, one upstairs. This carbon monoxide you don't have to have in each bedroom, just in the hallways. So one per level of each house. Okay. Most people install these up on the ceiling like a smoke detector because that's how they're made to be installed. Carbon monoxide is heavy. It's down by the floor. You'd be better off putting it lower, but there's no requirement on where you have to put it. But just letting you guys know that. Any questions about that form? All right, your square footage and lot size advisory. I just include this one. It's a notice to the buyer of what we're disclosing as the square footage and lot size. I usually take this from the tax records, but this is a good form that if you have one of those buyers or sellers, in fact, Heather, we may have, didn't Monique say that her property, wasn't she in dispute over what size her property was? Was it that one?
I couldn't find my unmute. Sorry, it went away.
No, you're fine.
Well, she was saying that the year
Oh,
was,
the year.
the
Okay.
year was different. Yeah, but she realized it wasn't.
Oh, good. So we'll go with tax records on that one. So normally we go with tax records, but sometimes a seller may be like, well, actually tax records show my property is 2,100 square feet, but I know because I measured it that it's 2,300 square feet, or that it's, who knows what's what. Maybe they did an addition and it hasn't registered, it was permitted and it's not registered yet, or maybe it was an unpermitted addition and they want to include that. It gives us a place here where the seller can tell us what the square footage is. And then how they came to that conclusion. The measurement comes from the following source. So normally I come up here and put in public record. I put in the square footage and the lot size as is listed in tax records. And then I click this little box over here for see report attached. And that's where I attach the tax records to this document so that it's included in my disclosures that here's the square footage that we have based on public record. And this form basically just tells the buyer that if they think the square footage and lot size is a material item related to this property, that they should go get it measured and do their own due diligence. Okay, pretty simple form there, but I do include it up front with the disclosures. In addition to that one, any questions about that form? Did I ask that? Okay. The other one that we usually include is the seller instructions to exclude listing from the multiple listing service. Barry's is does not participate in the clear cooperation policy of the National Association of Realtors. Everywhere else in our area surrounding us does. So anywhere else, the second you market that property to the public outside of our office is not the public, but anywhere outside of our office, coming soon sign, MLS, Facebook posts, postcards, it needs to be in the MLS within 24 hours. Barry's doesn't care. We can promote the heck out of that thing before it hits the MLS as a coming soon. You can put it in the MLS as a coming soon. And all you have to do here is we fill in the top with the listing agreement. We date the listing agreement. We put in the seller's name. We put in KW Vaca Valley as the broker. We put in our primary MLS. If it's in Barry's MLS, you're going to come down here to 3D and check the box that says the MLS has not adopted the National Association of Realtors Clear Cooperation Policy. And then you can fill in either one, how long we're going to keep that property off the market for a period of blank calendar days after the signing of a listing until blank date, like a specific date, or during the entire term of the listing agreement. If you don't know when you're going to go on the market, feel free just to check the box for during the entire listing period of the agreement. We can go back and change that with a modification of terms. Okay, super simple to change that. So that would be if you're in Barry's. If you're not in Barry's and the MLS is going to go outside of Solano, Sonoma, Napa, and Marin counties. So Barry's covers those counties. If it's outside of those counties, you probably have to participate in the clear cooperation policy. Then you're going to come down here to 4, and you're going to check one of these boxes of either do not market the property immediately, begin marketing the property to the public on blank date, or do not market the property to the public during the entire listing period. And then if we need to change that date or go from entire listing to put it in the MLS, we can do that again with a modification of terms. Okay, so section 3, well, I guess you would check this box here. Does not require, see paragraph D for Barry's. And then if it's not Barry's, we're just going to skip section 3 and go straight to section 4 and fill it in down there. Okay, and then you're going to take this form and you're going to fill out an exclusion in the MLS, which we'll talk about at another time. Any questions about the seller instructions to exclude the listing from the multiple listing service? The clear cooperation policy just states that if we have a listing because we belong to the National Association of Realtors, if we have a listing and we're going to market that listing, it's going to be in the MLS so that it's marketed to all the agents fairly and equally and able to show that property. So we can't just put it in the MLS and be like, no showings for 3 weeks. You'll get in trouble for that outside of Barry's. Okay, inside of Barry's, you're okay. Outside of Barry's, not okay. It has to be ready to show. All right. Scooting on down, we have our disclosure information advisory. This is my favorite disclosure that the sellers get to sign. I love this form. It's my favorite. I'll say that over and over again because it's a great form. This talks about the seller's responsibility for disclosure, and they did a really good job. Read through it sometime. We're not going to do that tonight because we have 5 minutes. I've covered it before, but it just goes through a really good way of describing it to the sellers, what they should and should not disclose on their forms. And it's really, it comes down to disclose it all and tell it all. And if you're thinking about, it's like one of them is, if you're unsure of whether something is important enough to be disclosed, you should probably disclose it. If you don't want to disclose the piece of information about the property, think about your reasons for why you do not want to disclose this information. If the answer is because you think a buyer would not want to buy the property or want to purchase it at a lower price, that is exactly the reason why the fact ought to be disclosed, right? So they just did a really good job of explaining this to the seller. I love this form. Thank you, Carr, for a form somebody can actually understand. Okay, so I include this one. It talks about preparing to complete their disclosure obligations, instructions for completing it. If you use Glide and you send out the forms through Glide, it reiterates this when the seller gets ready to go in and fill out their forms. It basically goes through this form again with them. Okay, talks about the exempt seller disclosure, the seller property questionnaire, and the transfer disclosure statement. Any questions about our disclosure information advisory? Okay. The other form that I include with my listing is for me to sign, not the seller. That's the Vaca Valley document retention standard certification, just stating that they're aware, that I am aware as an agent, that I'm required to provide my broker with copies of all documents and corresponded related to this transaction. By signing below, I certified that I'm going to put everything in the sky slope. Okay, we put the property address, who you represented, and you sign it. I started doing this at the beginning because it just alleviates the need for my TC to do it later on. If you're like, Amy, I've never seen that form before in my life, where would I find something like that? We would find it in SkySlope. And where you would find it in SkySlope is, hold on, I need to find a window. What's that one? Oh, hold on. We're gonna close that window. That's an old window. Okay. We're gonna go into SkySlope, which is that skyslope.com. Somebody chatted and I didn't see it. Oh, thank you, Melissa, for that form.
No problem.
We're gonna go log in, SkySlope Suites. Just like we did earlier today. We're just waiting for the internet. Tell the internet to hurry up. I've got 2 minutes. Just joking. All right. You're going to log in. Again, that's probably going to be your KW email. There's a hidden section in SkySlope, which we did not discuss earlier today. And that is called the working docs section of SkySlope. So when we open SkySlope and it brings us to the home page, I'm just trying to waste time while it actually opens the home page because it's moved to its snail pace. All right, down here in the bottom right-hand corner is the working documents. It looks like a little blue piece of paper. We're going to click on that. And then here at the top as personal docs and office docs right here. We're going to click on office docs to make that blue so that personal docs goes away because I don't have anything in there. And here in the office docs, you will see there is the new Solano County disclosures. There is a form for a personal transaction if you're representing the seller. Here is the KW Vaca Valley document retention form. That's the one we just went over. There's also a Napa, Sonoma, Mendocino County disclosure. There's a Contra Costa County disclosure, a Napa County disclosure, a Sacramento disclosure, a Yolo County disclosure. They're all there waiting for you at your disposal so that you can find them nice and easy, except that you never knew they existed. Yes.
Where, when your cursor went away, when you clicked to go into there, so where was that in the right? You said on the right top or right bottom to get into
So-
where you went?
Yeah, so
Right.
when you're in the home page of SkySlope, this working documents in the bottom right.
Oh,
It
okay.
looks like a blue piece of paper. And then once you click on that, then in the upper left, you have to click on office docs. So here in the upper left, it has personal docs is blue. And we
Mhm.
have to click on office docs to get there.
Okay, I just noticed that all these were from 2018. I just be careful because the Sacramento and San Leandro or Alameda County ones I uploaded, they said they were revised in 2021.
Oh, see, we probably have new ones that we need to update.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll get somebody on that. I'll talk to the folks about that.
So those are all just there on everybody's SkySlope. Like we don't have to go add them in. Those will just be there in that section where you just brought us to.
They're just there under the office.
Okay.
doc.
Magic. Thank you.
Magic. Everything is magic. So there is what I include with my offers and my listings. So basically my listing includes everything that the seller doesn't have to answer questions on. If the seller has to answer questions on it, which would be our TDS, which is our transfer disclosure statement, our seller property questionnaire or SBQ, the lead-based paint disclosure for homes built before 1978, and our earthquake hazards for homes built before like 1965. And then our exempt seller disclosure, if they're exempt, those I send out all through Glide. I also do my agent visual inspection disclosure, my AVID, for both my buyer and seller transaction through Glide. And oftentimes I send out my buyer inspection election through Glides as well, because that one the buyer answers questions for. Okay.
Amy, can you go back to your list that you had of all the disclosures for the sellers?
Yes.
So I can take a picture of it.
Yes, there is my list.
Thank
I think
Hold
that-
on. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
you.
No, go ahead. She's just taking a picture of that.
So you do your BIE through Glide?
My buyer inspection election can be done through Glide.
Okay.
And then it allows them, it'll go through and ask them, are you interested in any of these types of inspections? They mark yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then it'll go to the next 5, yes, no, and then it takes them to the end. And then they may mark yes on things they don't do, but it just really is a list of, hey, what are they interested in? So yeah, you send that out through Glide. Well, my transaction coordinator does, so sometimes I forget things.
Okay. Okay. I think I forgot that once or twice. Okay. Thank you.
It's probably my fault. And I'm not sure we're requiring it anymore. It used to be required.
Well, just because you already have the SBSA, so that's why I was asking that as well. So, okay.
Yeah, and we have to do the buyer inspection waiver if they don't get it. So it's really just kind of duplicate. I don't know. I don't know what we're
Okay.
requiring right now. I should know, but I do usually send that out through Glide.
Thank you. Sorry, Heather.
Amy, I have a non-form question. So whenever you're done and
All right. Any other form questions?